Best looking in cars of all time. Now, some people qualify cars looking good as whether they're pretty, whether they look cool because they have certain features like a fighter jet, or they have features of animals. But we're just going to rank top 10 and best looking cars of all time. Number 10, the Disco Velante, the Alfa Romeo Disco Velante. It means flying saucer, and it does look like a flying saucer. It has the signature Alfa Romeo grille with the triangle in the middle, and it just cut through the air. They did extensive testing on wind tunnels in order to make it look like a flying saucer, in order to make the drag the same all the way around the car. Aston Martin DB5. Obviously one of the coolest cars of all time, being in James Bond and being designed by an Italian. Being extremely pretty, but also keeping that sleek, cool look of a spy's car. Everyone knows that it's always going to be one of the prettiest cars of all time, and it has stood the test of time incredibly well. The McLaren 670 LT. A combination of taking the 720S, one of the best looking McLarens ever in my own opinion, in order to keep that sleek body style with having no side vents but having them along the line of the door, or in order to get air for the mid-engine car, but making a long tail version to make it look even more aerodynamic and making it handle even better, and adding even more power, just to make a beautiful, beautiful supercar. McLaren Senna has obvious controversial looks because it's not necessarily the prettiest car, but it looks cool. If you know anything about aerodynamics, it just is a compilation in order to make it everything about that car, to get it more downforce, to make it the best track car through aerodynamic supremacy. In order to utilize the air, there's all kinds of flaps on the inside of the grille in order to move air whether up or down or to the sides, in order to make that car just very cool. And you can't beat the giant wing on the back that will pop up in order to increase braking, or smoothing out in order to reduce drag, in order to hit those top speeds. It's an all-around cool looking car, and then when you look from the side, there's a window in it, so that way everyone can see what kind of pants you're wearing. Who knows? '33 Stradale Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo has made some incredible looking cars in their time, but none of them beats the '33 Stradale. Just looks like an LMP car of the time, and it was just so pretty, and not every one even looked alike. Some of them had different numbers of headlights, but every single one was just gorgeous to look at, and has very similar to the Ford GT look to it, but just a beautiful car that you expect to be on a track of that time period, but just utterly gorgeous, and you just want to be like, if you looked at that and you could picture yourself driving, you'd feel like a race car driver of the time. Chevy Corvette, the standard of American sports cars. Obviously, all of them are good-looking cars for each time period, but the best-looking ones are the first generation, which looked very much like a Thunderbird at the time, but wasn't necessarily cool-looking like all the rest. But they had such a prettiness to them, between the two-tone paint on a lot of them, and the T rear window on others, just made a gorgeous looking car. Alright. And then you go on, and some of them are relatively boring. The Stingray looks good, but other cars at the time, I think, surpass it. But then you move on generation after generation until you hit the C7 Corvette. The C7 Corvette, which put the Corvette into the sports car territory and gave the rest of the world, showed what American engineering could do. And they made one of the prettiest cars of all time in the Stingray, and one of the coolest cars in the Grand Sport, with the wide body, like the Z06, but still keeping that low sleek hood line from the Stingray. Just made an amazing looking car. And now we have the mid-engine Corvette, which has that sharp front end, but looks like a 458 that was just with was designed with a Corvette in mind. It's an utterly amazing car. Ferrari, the Ferrari. Literally, the La Ferrari means the Ferrari in Italian. Meaning, this is the Ferrari ever made. And it will forever be that way. As in, one of the coolest, most capable, prettiest cars of all time. I love the P1. I like the 918 quite a lot. But out of the supercar, the hypercar or class, you cannot beat the look of the La Ferrari. It is in a league of its own as far as how pretty the styling was. And those between the very far out mirrors and angular design and the way you had the active aerodynamics in the back in order to increase the downforce or to decrease drag in order to incorporate a Venturi effect on the ground effects. And the active air with the rear spoiler that would come up in a perfect curve made it just look stunning. An utterly gorgeous car. Our P1's still better though. The Jaguar E-Type will forever be known as one of the prettiest cars of all time. It just has, even non-car lovers look at it and go, that is so pretty. You cannot beat the classic British design of pretty open-topped sports cars. They had their own league of it. But none beats the E-Type. And the only thing that was within a league within it was the Eagle. That was also made by Jaguar. And that one was even faster and more capable than E-Type. But the E-Type was just that perfect amount of pretty and sleek body design. And it will ever hold that title. Mazda RX-7. Obviously an incredibly intriguing car. And always very cool looking. First generation looking like a Lotus Elise. And the next looking like a Porsche 944. And then in the third generation, they did their completely own thing and made one of the prettiest, and definitely the prettiest, of Japanese sports cars, incorporating all kinds of new futuristic looks to it, while still keeping the classic Japanese sports car vibes. With the legendary rotary engine found within it, none can ever compete with how good the third gen RX-7 looks, and it is on my bucket list of cars I want to drive before I die. Lamborghini Aventador. Lamborghini has always set the standard for the bedroom wall poster, whether that be the Countach in the 80s, but can you beat the Aventador with its wedge styling, with the points on it that makes it look like a fighter jet? Everything about it just screams cool. With the angular design and the flaps that go up, it makes you wish that you were a fighter pilot. And I bet when you're within it, you feel like a fighter pilot. And that's my list. Let me know down in the comments whether you agree, if there's cars that you think I missed, or if you think that I was completely off base.